Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today's tutorial is for another pattern from Lacus Designs. The last video I did, I had so much fun sewing up that bag that I immediately wanted to make another one of her patterns. For this tutorial, I'm going to be sewing up the Tara bag. This is the latest pattern from Lacus Designs, and I have not sewn it before, so we're going to be sewing this once again together for the first time. I want to start breaking down in the beginning of my videos the skills that we'll be going over, the skills I'll be sewing. For this tutorial, I'm going to be demonstrating how to add piping to a bag. We will be birthing this bag, so it'll be a birthed bag through a zipper pocket, but we'll also talk about other ways you could birth it. We're going to have a gusset, and so it'll be sewing a gusset around a curve, and we'll practice those steps too. That will be some of the techniques we're using in this video. For this bag, we're going to kind of be talking about it in sections. I'm going to have 4 sections for this bag. All of the materials I'm using today are a cotton canvas. They're all from J&R Edwards. I did interface some of these pieces, and we're going to talk about them as we go through them. But I did not use any medium weight interfacing. Your medium weight interfacing is your SF101 or equivalent. Didn't use any of that. The only thing I did use was some Thermolan. Let's talk about the first section of this bag. We are going to have front, back pieces. This is going to be our main pieces for this bag. It's going to be these rounded shapes. This is my exterior. On the back of my exterior, I did add a piece of Thermolan that I kept out of the seam allowance. I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance consistently throughout this bag, so I kept that fleece out of there. So I have a front and a back piece with my Thermolan attached to it. 2 pieces there. Then I have the same pieces for my lining. Like I said, this is a cotton canvas, so no interfacing at all. The canvas has very little stretch. It feels great. It feels like a piece of cotton woven with the interfacing already attached. So I get to skip that step. So 2 of those front and back. For my interior pieces, for these main panels, I'm going to add 2 pockets. I'm going to do a slip pocket and a zipper pocket. The zipper pocket is again an uninterfaced piece of cotton canvas. I did go ahead and use the pattern measurements and draw my box on the back. And then I have one number 5 zipper with the pull already attached onto it. For the slip pocket, I'm having to do mine a little differently because I ran out of material. This was really all I had left. And so I did have to cut 2 pieces so that I can make a small slip pocket. Yours, if you have enough material for the pattern, it would only be 1 piece, but that will be my slip pocket for the other side of the interior. So this is the first section. Let's talk about this one. This is actually going to be the first thing I really work on. It's our flap. I'm going to be doing a few things differently to my flap, mainly because I'm using all of the same print for this bag. Because of that, I want the flap to stand out a little bit more, so I'm going to add a layer of piping just to give it a little pop against the main panels. If you are using contrasting materials, you wouldn't need that so much necessarily because yours would stand out already. But I just want the distinction so you can see the flap clearly against the body of the bag. So for my flap, let's go over all the pieces that we're going to use to create it. The first thing I have is the 2 flap pieces. This is going to be considered my interior, nothing on it. This is going to be my exterior, and I have a layer of that Thermolan again out of the seam allowance. What I will do first is I will add my piping to that exterior piece, and then I will add my tag. I'm using tags from Heartwood and Hyde. I will put this right like this to have a little bit of a backer to it so it stands out a little bit more and just adds a little bit of an extra look to it. I will trim this down and put this on the flap. For this flap, we are going to also add a swivel hook. This bag has a unique way of securing it closed. There's not a zipper, there's not a magnetic snap. There's actually going to be a swivel hook that's going to be on the flap, and then this D-ring that's going to be on the bottom, and that's going to be the way we close it. So it's a really cool look. So the swivel hook will attach to my flap. This D-ring will actually attach to the exterior main portion of the bag. So that is the second component. Let's talk about the third, just a really quick strap. We're going to just do this as your basic strap. I had to piece together my fabric, so I'll be sewing it and piecing it together as I go. And then I will just do a 4-way fold on this and then stitch down the 2 long edges. I will add an adjustable bar, and I just realized I forgot to grab that, so I'll grab that adjustable bar and put 2 swivel hooks on that. The last component we have is going to be our gussets. We're going to have 2 gussets, one exterior, one lining. On the exterior, again, that thermoline just to give it a little bit extra, like for stability and support, so if I'm sitting it up, it's not just crumpling down. Same thing for the lining, nothing on it though. You can see that my print is directional. I did join these in the middle so that I could have both of the designs the right way whenever I'm looking at the bag. And then I have my 2 D-ring connectors, basic connectors. We don't do a 4-way fold, we just fold the raw edges to the middle and we let it stay there. I will top stitch down both sides of these and then fold them with my D-ring on it. These D-rings will attach to the top of your gusset. Now that we've went over all the basic steps and everything, we're going to go ahead and start prepping this bag. We're going to be working on making our flap first. I will tell you that I thought I was already filming, and the only step I did was I did glue my tag onto the backing of this vinyl. Then I realized I wasn't filming and I stopped. But I did use a Beacon 3-in-1 and just put a little bit of glue there. I will trim down this backing a little bit more. So now what we're going to do while we're waiting for that glue to dry and everything, we're going to be working on the piping. I'm going to be applying the piping to the exterior piece. For me, that's the piece with the thermoline. This is just pre-made, bought piping from Amazon. I didn't make it, but you can easily make your own if you don't have any. I do have videos on how to make your own piping. So now that I have the piping, I have a finished edge on my piping and I have a raw edge. I already know that my piping between this piece of piping and the rest of the tail of it is 1/4 of an inch. So I know, since I'm sewing this bag with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, all I have to do is I have to line up this raw edge of the piping with the raw edge of my flap and be sewing right here where the piping ends. That's what you want to do. So if I wanted to sew with a 3/8 of an inch, I would just offset my piping a little bit so my needle would hit right before that piping starts, and then I would get that proper seam allowance with the piping not being lost in it. For me, it's a little bit simpler. I'm going to cut my piping so that it's larger than my flaps, so I don't even have to worry about measuring it. And I have a little bit of an overhang there. I'll start sewing here and go all the way down. When I come to the corner, I am going to choose to give my flap just a slight curve so that my piping looks a little bit better. You don't have to do this. You could have it completely straight in the corner. You'll just have kind of like a little dent there. I'm just choosing to change that just a little bit. It won't be very noticeable, but it'll just make for a smoother piping. Okay, so now it's time to add the piping to the flap. I have the raw edges aligned. I have an overhang here because I cut my piping larger than my flap. All I'm going to do right now is baste this into place. So I'm just going to sew 1/8 of an inch all the way around. When I add the lining piece to the flap, that's when I'll get that full seam allowance and get right up against the piping. I'm coming to this curve, and so what I'm going to do is just make a really gentle curve there, and it will change the shape. My flap will not have that corner, but I'm okay with that because I want the piping to look as smooth as possible. So I just have that really natural, easy, gentle curve. I'm going to go around pivoting, turning my foot every chance to make sure it all lines up evenly. And then I'll come down to the bottom and make sure I realign that piping with the flap edge. I'm over to the other curve. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now, if you're worried that, oh, well, my curve might not look the same on either side, you can definitely measure and plan things out a little bit better. I'm okay. This is trying to wrinkle up, so I'm just going to use my hemostats to hold it down just a little bit. But it won't matter in the end. It'll be so unnoticeable if it's not exactly perfect. So now that I've got the piping on, I'm going to trim up my corners and trim this overhang, and then we'll go on to the next step. I trimmed off the extra piping and I trimmed off the corners of my flap. I went ahead and tried to decide where I wanted to put my tag. I think I want this one kind of down low, and I do have it centered. I trimmed off the backing. I decided I didn't want like a lot of backing, just a very small, understated little bit of backing on it. So you barely see the purple, and that's cool with me. I'm going to use the glue, and I'm going to glue a little bit of this down. And then what I'll do is I'll just stitch around the tag itself. I won't stitch on the purple at all. And it'll be fine. That little bit won't be okay that it's not stitched down, because it'll be stitched with the tag. So there's just a little bit of glue. Like I said, not a lot, just to kind of help it so that it doesn't shift while I'm sewing. I'm going to pull my threads long, and that way I can just knot off the threads instead of back stitching on the tag, just to give it a little bit of a smoother look. And I will do that, and then I'm also going to take out this swivel hook connector, and I'm going to top stitch down both sides of it, then fold it in place and baste along that bottom edge there. So what I'm going to do with this piece is I'm actually going to attach this one to my lining. I think the pattern tells you to attach it to here, but I want to make sure that my piping is, like, the strap is below the piping. So I'm going to attach it to my lining piece just to secure that for sure, just to make sure I definitely have it the way I want it. So let's go through. If I have that flap, this is the way that it'll look, and when you flip it up, it'll be the right way. So when you open it up, your bag, it'll look great. So I need to attach right here at this bottom part. So I just find that center point there. So I have it centered. I want to make sure that I have it perfectly centered here with my ruler. Now I'm going to baste this into place. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two flaps right sides together. Okay, I'm just going to match up these top edges first. Make sure your little swivel hook stays in there. And then you can clip all the way around if you want to, or just add a few clips here and there so things don't shift while you're sewing. If you remember, I need to be really careful because I have that piping. So I can feel that piping there. What I really want to do, honestly, is I want to have my foot actually on that piping so that I get that exact 1/4 of an inch. If you don't have the piping, you don't have to worry about that. If you have a piping foot, you won't have to worry about that. But if you're like me, you'll have to kind of go slow so you can keep that foot, half of that foot leg on the piping. I'm going to lock in my stitches here. These are right sides together. And if you don't do the piping and if you don't do a directional print, so much easier. You can see I just slipped off. I need to come back on. And what I'm having to do is I'm having to apply a little bit of pressure to keep everything like the foot wants to slide off that piping and I don't want it to. So I'm going to have to keep holding it tight, keeping the seam allowance. As long as I keep that 1/4 inch of a seam allowance, I'm perfect. If I shift off of the 1/4 inch, that's whenever I have the possibility of losing my piping or having too much showing. Make sure your swivel hook is pushed up so that you won't accidentally hit it with your needle. Okay, so I have it stitched around, 1/4 inch seam allowance. I back stitched at the beginning and the ending. Turn this around. I'm going to trim up these little edges here. Look at that. It looks great. Now, I love it. Only thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to top stitch all around here. Actually, no, I think I did this wrong. I think I need to close up this. Let me check, because I think I need this to be a finished edge. So either I think I need to turn around and make that like a little turning hole. I could do a row of binding for a decorative touch there. So I didn't look at the pattern, but I'm pretty sure you're supposed to just leave an opening here. And so you can tuck that in and have this a finished edge. But I have an idea and I think I'm going to go with it. So what I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and top stitch around here, close up that opening gap, and then we'll move on with our next step. I am already falling in love with how this looks. I think it's going to be so beautiful. I'm not ready to attach the flap yet, so what I'm going to do is work on some of the other pieces. So let's go ahead and sew up the D-ring connectors. This will be what the strap attaches to at the end. And I'm just sewing 1/8 of an inch down both sides, nothing fancy here. Now that I have this first one sewn, I'm going to go ahead and slip that D-ring on and baste on against the raw edges, and then I'll go ahead and sew against this edge too. That's not a necessary step, and I'll, of course, repeat the same thing for the other one. Okay, now I got that done. Let's go ahead and get this strap made. I usually wait till the end with the strap, but I'm trying to get better about making those straps early, because once I get the bag sewn, I am so excited to have it done that I tend to I'll just do the strap later. I'm going to have to piece these together. So what you do when you piece them together is you just kind of orientate it the way you want it to go. My print's directional, so I want to make sure I have that properly. And then I just flip this down, and then I'm just going to sew a diagonal across those two pieces to connect them. I'll trim off above the stitch line about 1/4 of an inch, press the seams open with the iron, and then I'll do just a traditional 4-way fold, making sure the edges are encased. And that's how I'll have my strap long enough to where it can be used as a crossbody if I want to. And I'll put an adjustable bar, so crossbody or a shoulder strap. I have my strap ready to be sewn. I have my swivel hooks and my adjustable bar. I'm just going to sew down both long edges of the strap. I do that about 1/8 of an inch away. I'm going to take my adjustable bar, feed the strap up and over that bar. I'm going to fold one edge under, and then fold that around so that I have all the raw edges encased. Let's just put a clip there, and then we'll get everything else done and then sew them both at the same time. I make sure I don't twist anything Put one swivel hook on that free end. Take that free edge, feed it up and under again. And then I'll take the other swivel hook and I'll fold down one edge of that strap. Put the swivel hook right in that crease, fold it down again. So once again, all the raw edges are encased. Clip there. I got threads everywhere. I need to trim those up. And now I'm just going to stitch down these 2 spots that I have clipped. And I usually do 2 rows of stitching here, but you definitely don't have to, but that's what I'll do again. You can also do rivets if you choose. Okay, my strap is done. I will cut and trim all my loose threads and get that all tidied up. But we will set this aside till we're done with the bag completely. I'll put it over here so it's not in the way. The next thing I'll start working on is that interior. I'm going to do 2 pockets, both a zipper pocket and a slip pocket. Like I said, I'm not able to do my slip pocket exactly like the pattern because I did not have enough material. So this is the way I should have done the flap, honestly. I should have sewed all around, just leaving an opening to turn and then tuck that in. And then it's completely, you know, like no raw edges, completely finished. I'll do the slip pocket that way, but like I told you, the flap I'm doing a different way. So I am just going to leave the opening. I'm going to sew with that same seam allowance all the way around, and then we'll turn it, poke out the corners, top stitch, and attach it to the lining. Okay, my corners poked out decently. My top is already wanting to go the way it should go. So I'm going to top stitch now, and then I will attach it to the lining. Now to figure out how I'm going to place it, I am just going to finger press that really good. I'm going to take my lining, finger press that, and that way I can just lay these 2 pieces right along that crease. And that's the way my slip pocket is going to be attached. I am now going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge on all 3 sides. I'm just going to trim up the threads, and that slip pocket is done on this lining piece. I want to grab the other lining piece, the zipper, and the zipper box. I already drew that according to the pattern measurements. Now what I'm doing is I'm just sewing directly on that line that I drew. Use the measurements given in the pattern, and then you just sew around it. Now that I have that box drawn, I just fold these 2 pieces together, make a snip right in the middle. I go through all the layers. I open it back up. Let me go ahead and get that thread out of there. And then I just start cutting down until I'm probably about 1/2 of an inch away. Once I'm about 1/2 of an inch away, then I angle my cutting to go directly to that corner, getting as close as possible without going through those stitches. And then I flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to push the lining through and get it as clean of an opening as possible. So I will definitely take this over to the ironing board. The way I start it is I usually flip it up and press that first. I'll also open up this seam, press it open, and this just makes a feel. Maybe I'm just crazy, but this just seems to make it go, like lay so much flatter and like have a better look whenever I'm pressing it and whenever I'm putting the zipper in. So I do take a little bit more time on this step. See how I'm just opening that up and pressing them apart. And I feel like it helps. Maybe I'm just imagining things. I don't know. But then I go ahead and I press it through. Since I'm using all of the same print, it doesn't matter too much, but I'll still try to make sure that I get this as flat as possible over at the ironing board, so it's like just the lining is showing and not any of the lining zipper pocket piece. So I'm going to do that with the top and the bottom, getting that all pressed open so I have that nice little opening there. And I'll do the same thing with the seam on this one, but let me just show you. It'll just be like a little box all pressed flat. So let me go do that and then we'll come back and add the zipper. So I went and I pressed that hole open really well. I'm going to take my zipper. I want my pull closing to the left. All I'm going to do is lay this on top. I have the zipper right side up, the fabric right side up, and I'm just going to sew around this box. That'll attach the zipper to the lining. I'm going to make sure while I'm sewing that I have those zipper teeth right in the middle of the box the entire time. If you want to use clips, glue, pins, whatever you want to use, you can, double-sided tape. I'm just going to keep mine open. The one thing I will do is make sure that zipper is centered so I have plenty of room on both sides and that the teeth stay right there in the middle. I'll be sewing about 1/8 of an inch away from that folded edge. So this is the way it looks from the front. This is the way it looks from the back. I just flipped that down. If you measure better than I did, yours would match it perfectly. I didn't do such a great job on that. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, after I've folded it down, I'm going to come back to the right sides and I'm going to flip the lining up, sew down this side, leave the bottom completely open. So I'll back stitch here, break my stitches, and then come over and sew down this side. We're leaving that bottom open so we can turn this back. If you did not want to do the zipper pocket or birth this way, you could leave an opening in your gusset when we attach it. Or this bag is the perfect bag to do a drop-in lining if you would want to do it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to follow the pattern. But just know there's options if you wanted to do a different method or if you wanted to practice with different methods of like a drop-in lining. This is a great one to do it on. Now that I got that zipper pocket taken care of, I'm just going to trim up everything so it's all nice and even. Like I said, if I would have followed the pattern instead of just like doing my own thing on the zipper pocket, I wouldn't have so much overhang. Trim down my zipper. So now I have the zipper pocket. I'm going to go ahead and open this up a little bit. We have the opening at the bottom. We also have the lining with the slip pocket. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the interior gusset. The interior gusset is the one without anything on the back for me. I already know where my center is because I had to sew those two pieces together since my print is directional. So for me, it's going to be pretty easy to match this up. I still have the line from in the center from whenever I added my slip pocket. So I'm going to just start putting this gusset with the lining. I'm going to have to sew this gusset around 2 times on the lining and then 2 more times on the exterior. I'll show you how I'll do it this first time, but I won't go through all the steps with each one just because it wouldn't be, I don't think, very beneficial for you to watch all of them. But what you'll do is you'll take your gusset and one of your lining pieces, let me get that out of the way so you don't get confused, and just flip it right sides together, match up the centers, and then we're going to clip all the way around. What I like to do is I like to put a few clips on both sides of the center, just so I get that held into place really well. And then I'll go ahead and fold it up and clip these side pieces up to where they are flush there at the top. And this will help me to get everything to kind of, all the curves to kind of ease in the best way I can. Sometimes we still have to make adjustments, but this is the best practice for getting an evenly spread gusset. So now that I have the tops clipped, the bottom clipped, I'm going to start slowly easing it around in that curve, and hopefully I have a good fit here. Oh, it fits perfectly. I love it when a designer takes the time to get a perfectly fitted gusset. And when they have testers, usually they do, and it just works out so good. It makes it such a more enjoyable experience. Whenever you have a gusset that doesn't fit properly, sometimes you get a little anxious, like, did I do something wrong? Is this going to look okay at the end? But this one fits wonderfully. So that's awesome. So here is how my gusset's clipped. I'm going to sew this on with the seam allowance given the pattern. For me, that's going to be 1/4 inch. After I sew this on, I will do the same thing with the other side of the lining, making it right sides together, clipping all the way around and sewing it. That'll be completing the lining portion of this bag. If you didn't want to do the zipper pocket, you could leave an opening in your gusset here. It's just where this is a curve, it would be trickier to do it. So I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest either using the opening in the zipper pocket to birth it, or doing a drop-in lining for this bag. So let's go ahead and sew this, and then I will sew this lining part off camera, and then we'll come back and get everything ready with our exterior, and we're almost done, and I cannot wait to see how this bag turns out. You can see as I'm sewing, I'm just going to keep pulling the gusset and the lining, kind of holding them together. Even though I have clips, I kind of like to use my fingers instead, just to make sure I have everything and nothing slipping. I go around the curve slowly, and I try to make sure I don't sew over any like puckers or pleats or anything, so I have a really smooth finish. When you start sewing the lining gusset first, you get a little more practice if you're not good with sewing with a gusset or curves. So that way when you start with the exterior, where it really counts, is going to be very obvious, you have a little bit more practice kind of under your belt, and you kind of feel a little bit more secure in your ability to sew around that curve. I have one little area here where I went over my seam allowance a little bit. I just got distracted and wasn't paying attention. If this was the exterior, I would fix that right away. Where it's the lining, I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to go off camera and attach this, and then we will come back and work on the exterior of the bag. I have the lining ready to go. Now I've got to do the exact same thing to the exterior, but I have to do a few other steps first to the exterior to get it ready. First thing is this little D-ring connector that I made earlier. I need to put it on the bottom of the front of the bag. This is going to be what that swivel hook on the flap connects to. So I'm going to center it. This is the center mark on the bottom of my front, and I'm going to center it. I'm just going to base this in place. So now that I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my flat piece and the back exterior piece. If you remember, I did my flap just a little bit differently. So since I have a raw edge here, I have to make sure that I place my line. The pattern tells you the measurement of the line. I have to place mine 1/4 of an inch lower than the one in the pattern, just to account for that seam allowance I did not add. So I drew my line and I drew the center mark so I can place my flap on this line perfectly. We want our exterior back right side up. We want our flap right side up. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to base this in place with 1 row of stitching. Then I'm going to come back and add that decorative piece of binding to cover up the raw edge and to also just give a little bit of a feature, a little bit of a unique look there. This is fold over elastic, very stretchy, and I'm going to cut it a little bit bigger than what I need it for, just so I can have a little bit of room to kind of play around with and not worry about it too much. But what I want to do is I want to make sure I have it like an exact line. I want to try to keep it as straight as possible. I could glue it in place. I definitely wouldn't want to use double-sided tape because my machine does not like double-sided tape. But I think I feel pretty comfortable just clipping it in place. I'm going to look at it. That glitter's going everywhere. Maybe it might be pretty, but it might make a mess everywhere. But what I want to do is I want to make for sure that that raw edge is centered. I want to be able to sew on both sides of this piece of fold over elastic to kind of help secure. If you wanted, you could even do a line in the middle. I'm not going to. I'm just going to do 2 rows of stitching. But I want to make sure that this is a straight line and that the raw edge is exactly in the middle of this fold over elastic. I'm going to top stitch down both sides of this to hide that raw edge and secure this decorative piece to the bag. For our exterior pieces, let's look at what we have left. This is our back, this is our front, here's our gusset and our 2 D-rings. I'm going to take the gusset and go ahead and attach it the exact way I did with the lining, putting it right sides together with both pieces. The D-rings, if you wanted, you could go ahead and add them now to your bag on the gusset pieces. We're just going to center them and sew them down, but I think I'm going to wait, and the pattern says to wait too, to just add these at the very end, so that way when you're putting the gusset on, they're not kind of creating some extra issues in there, just getting in the way or anything like that. So I'm going to hold on to these, I'm going to attach the gusset, and then I will come back and we'll add our D-rings. So I went ahead and sewed the exterior all together, have the D-rings attached, and have the flap tucked in there so you can see everything looks good. I am going to go ahead and turn this right sides out so that I can put it inside the interior. So now what I'm going to do is take the interior and stuff the exterior inside there. I'm going to flip my flap and put it down in there too. I want to be careful so that I don't get like horrible wrinkles in this and everything, but it doesn't matter if it goes just all smushy in there. Okay, so now what we're doing is going to line up the side seams first. That'll be the easiest thing to do. I'm going to nest the seams so that they are going in opposite directions. My exterior, my interior are right sides together. I'm nesting those seams on the side first. That's how I'm starting to line up this bag. As long as you sewed everything with the proper seam allowance, everything's going to fit. It may seem kind of like you have to smash things around a little, but it'll still fit around here because you've done everything correctly, you know? So just keep smashing and finagling to get it to all line up. If you made center marks on these main front and back panels, you could match them up too. If you haven't opened your zipper pocket, you still have time to do it now. Okay, all we're going to do is sew around the top. Then we're going to reach in and turn it through this pocket right there. Before I close everything up, I'm going to go ahead and fix this pocket and get it taken care of. Okay, now that I got that pocket folded in, I am just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from that folded edge just to close it up. Okay, I'm tucking that pocket in there, zipping that up, pushing the lining completely inside. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll these edges down. I just want my lining to be just underneath the exterior. So my exterior is just slightly going in there. I'm going to clip all the way around here. Okay, let's go ahead and top stitch all around, and that's the last step to making this bag. I'm going to start in the back, and if you're really nervous, you could flip this so the exterior is wrong sides out, and that way you could top stitch on the exterior, but I feel pretty comfortable that I can just go slow and have a really good stitch on this. Have that top stitch. Let me trim up my threads. Let me see if I need to do any shaping overnight with this bag, and let's see how it looks. I love how I did it with just the fleece and the canvas. I feel like it does not need any more structure on that. I feel like the structure is great. Let's see how the flap looks, because you know I did do some adjustments there. Perfect, perfect. I do feel like I probably could have put that down a little bit further on that, because you can see my flap is still a little bit too long. But what I might do is adjust this part, like take out the stitches here and slip this up a little bit more. I think I will do that. So I went ahead and took the time to shorten my strap right here. Definitely I needed to do better on following the instructions in the pattern because mine was too long. Looks way better there. I really like it this way. So definitely take caution whenever you're doing that part so you don't do like me and mess that up. But beautiful bag. I love it so much. This is the second Lacus design tutorial that I've done in a row, and I just love these patterns. They're cute, unique, fun, easy, quick sew. So if you're like wanting to get in the sewing room and make something beautiful, definitely try out one of her patterns. I love them, and they're just a great way to show off beautiful fabric. The fabric is from Jane R. Edwards. I'm going to have the links to both in my description. And thank you again for watching another tutorial of mine. I think my next one will be the sewing marathon that's coming up for January. And until then, I hope you guys have a great time sewing something beautiful in your sewing room. Thanks so much.